very glad that wayfarers who took it up, because it could have gotten really destroyed in somebody else's hands.
What happens when Sony executives call their lead actress an effing terrorist? When the entire production team says they don't know what to do, it's gone completely out of control, and their best friend, pop icon Taylor Swift, has gone completely silent, leaving a man whose entire career has been built around making a difference completely destroyed. The unsealed documents in the Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni case have revealed something to me far more disturbing than a workplace dispute. This is about the corruption of art, the weaponization of movements, and the complete destruction of a legacy. What happens when an actress decides she wants to be the director, the producer, the writer, and the star all at once? What happens when a purpose-driven filmmaker gets steamrolled by celebrity ego and studio greed? What happens when a film about DV gets marked with flower patches and grab your girlfriend's energy? You get this disaster. And we're going to break it all down from the unsealed documents to this inside Hollywood perspective. Let's get in. Welcome to the Ashley B TV show. I've worked in Hollywood and newsrooms for over 15 years. I've seen what goes on behind the scenes with major studios, with sets, with huge actresses. And I'm here to tell you that the corruption we've seen play out in this case is exactly why I've left the industry. And I'm very passionate about creators taking control of their own careers, leaving Hollywood and building their own Hollywood. Because if there's anything that we've seen play out in this whole situation, it's that you do not have control in Hollywood. And in fact, it's money and power that will always win. So if you are a creator and you're interested in building your own brand and building your own channels, go ahead and check out my resources below. All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to break down everything that's come out. We're talking about the unsealed documents, the depositions, the industry insider reports, the legal implications, and what this means for the future of filmmakers. This is going to be thorough, and truly, I hope it's going to be the last video I do on this case because it just feels very dark. We're seeing a lot of corruption, a lot of media manipulation, but I've also felt very called to give this perspective of what's going on and what we're seeing to help you guys out there if you are looking to build your own empires, to really know what goes on in Hollywood and what to avoid. This is one of the most important cases in the entertainment industry. I truly believe. I think it's one of those O.J. Simpsons and then Amber Heard and then Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. I have combed through as much of the depositions and all the unsealed documents as possible. I've also spent hours rewatching Baldoni's podcast interviews, marketing promotions with Blake, Colleen, Liz Plank, and the whole gambit. And I've also consulted producers currently in the industry to get their inside take on how this is going to play out and what this is going to mean for. So first off, I want to address what I think is really important, and that is intention versus impact. Because you are seeing that the intention between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni in entering this set was completely different. And why this is important is because it really determines how they both moved and operated in this film world and the decisions they made. And we need to really dissect how different this is. Because when it comes to intention, that is going to dictate all of your decisions, every creative choice, the film's budget, the promo, and ultimately the impact on the film itself. Justin Baldoni, obviously an indie filmmaker, as an actor, came from the CW world, built Wayfair Studios with a lot of people in the Baha'i faith. Their whole thing is making the world a better place. If you take a look at Baldoni's previous projects, he's talking about the last days that you're spent on Earth before you die. Just really meaningful things. Empire Waste, body positivity, working alongside Rainn Wilson for many years. His films, intentionally, you can tell, weren't commercial blockbusters. They were purpose-driven films. This is very important because when he discovered It Ends With Us, I'm reminded in many of his interviews, it was in 2019. Why this is crucial is because 2019, there was TikTok, but it wasn't taking off like it is now. So he didn't discover this on Book Talk. He discovered it, he says, when there were only a few hundred reviews on Goodreads, right? He says he engulfed the book, read it all, and then was brought to tears so much that he knew this was going to be a powerful story to tell. This wasn't a bandwagon jump. Why this was very important distinction is because this is not obviously how Blake Lively found the source material. She was sent the script many years later, And then it was people she was associated with that said, oh my God, this book is huge. So Blake's intention going into it was already, oh, this is huge. This could be a big deal. Book talk is exploding. Justin Baldoni from day one was genuine discovery. What did he do from the start? He partnered with the organization No More. This was a leading DV advocacy group. And representation from this group have come on his podcast, Man Enough. I re-listened to their clips on Man Enough and their whole segment. And they said from the start, they loved how Justin knew this was a very serious story. We helped build out the script. So this is very important to keep in mind. The script that Justin Baldoni was presenting versus the script that Blake was presenting had the buy-in from people who worked for organizations that supported DV.
There was a lot of co-creation in that script to make it what it's turned out to be.
Right.
So we're really excited
and very, very glad that wayfarers who took it up, because it could have gotten really destroyed in somebody else's hands.
He worked with them from the start to build out their scripts. From the beginning, he put his money where his mouth was.
It was great to work with you a lot on the revision of the text and coming back and forth. And I have to say, the level of care that you had was just amazing in terms of the character and how they were actually being put forward.
And you allowed us to have the freedom to look at the script and revise the script and give you give you notes on revisions and make sure that things come across the best way possible while being true to the story.
He literally said, I believe it was 1% to 2% of the proceeds, which is insane, would go to their organization. People don't do that if they don't really, really, truly back a cause. So he also said time and time again, his intention was if just one person sees our film and leaves an abusive situation from watching this film, his job will have been done. Now, Blake Lively, as we said, she was shown this script. She was told this is going to be huge. So she already went into this saying this is going to be a blockbuster. She hadn't been in a lot of films for many years because she took a break from acting. She had 4 children. Her and her husband said they're never going to be on the set at the same time. Someone always has to be with the children. They also usually will move with the whole family, like set, like they are all traveling together. They're always together. This is how they've been able to keep their family so close. So this is her first movie back after taking a few years hiatus, and she's being presented this script and being told this could be insane. This could be a huge franchise. And what just happened a few years prior, I keep relating this back to Margot Robbie and the Barbie franchise. She also had gotten a little bit of taste of control. One, from merely being around her Deadpool husband and from her mega super pop star icon best friend, Taylor Swift. So she's around these mega players. Ryan, I recently rewatched his interview at a TIFF panel for one of his films, and he straight up says that he hijacked projects just to trick studios into getting Deadpool made.
And they just wouldn't do anything with it. So then some asshole leaks it online, and I'm like, looking at the guy in the mirror brushing my teeth, and I'm like, dude, what have you done? This could be punishable by law. But the internet forced the studio to say, well, we're going to make this movie. And I was, 24 hours later, that movie had a green light. Yes, I cheated a little, but I think I was onto something that people would be interested in. And I'm grateful that I kind of listened to that instinct, and I'm grateful that I did the wrong thing.
He accidentally, someone released it to the interwebs, and then the studio couldn't refuse to make Deadpool because Deadpool wasn't supposed to be made. It's this level of deception and deceit that shows you that these types of people are not playing at the level that you and I are playing at. They are truly at a level where money has afforded them the power to believe that they don't follow the same rules as everyone else. They are above everyone else. If they want something made, they will find a way to get something made, even if that means leaking it to the internet in order to get something made, right? So you're already around these people around you who have so much money and so much power that they feel like no one can say no to them. Could you imagine operating in that type of world, in that type of environment where whatever you want can be achieved. So when you enter a set and you feel like your director is loosey-goosey doofus and doesn't know what he's doing, you don't feel like you're being SH'd. You feel like this set is bonkers. I need to take control. I know how to take control because why? Not because I have a ton of film credits, but because I have one credit directing my best friend, the most famous person in the entire world, Taylor Swift. I have one credit directing her project, but I also have all of these mega superstars around me that know how. I literally have my husband's marketing team coming on board. Blake Lively entered this set knowing that she had the most power and that she was the one in the most control. However, she was an actress on this film. Now you guys finally understand what I was saying this entire time, that Blake Lively is not a producer on this film. A lot of the little internet TikTokers like to say, yes, she was. You guys don't understand what a producer is on films. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to, put anyone down. But given an EP credit on something even Colleen Hoover is admitting, it's just kind of a vanity credit. These are vanity credits that are given to top tier talent to get them, more back end deals and also to make them look better to get more deals in the future. Blake Lively did not even have that producer credit. It was only till later when she started doing producer things that she forced her way to get that credit and then get her PGA mark. So from rewatching all of her interviews, it was made so clear what she wanted out of this film. She wanted the franchise, but more importantly, after rewatching her hour-long book bonanza, you guys think I was just sitting on this week. I promise you I wasn't. I was taking all this information in. Rewatching her book bonanza panel with Colleen Hoover and Brandon Sklenar, you see that in over an hour, no one mentions anything about TV and the importance of this story and why Lily Bloom is so powerful and is so brave, because she overcame this abusive situation. That is why audience members flocked to this book, because they felt like their story was finally being told. Throughout the course of that panel, let me remind you, Blake Lively literally said, I got patches for our jeans from Amazon so we can all wear flowers together. What is she trying to do here? She's trying to create a movement. She's trying to create a girly pop sleepover. She wanted to turn this into a Spice Girls sleepover.
Like at Comic-Con, they do that. This is like Comic-Con, but like for women. I've coined it Coho-Macon.
She literally called this film the Comic-Con for women. She wanted to turn this into a cultural movement, fun, girly, and commercial. That's why she felt like, well, Lily Bloom has beautiful hair. She's got flowers. I will go ahead and pair this with, what else have I been building up for the past few years? I've been building up my hairline. I've been building up my alcohol products. So what happens typically when you release anything, right? A film, a product, whatever, you always pair it with like another product so you get more sales, because when you have the moment, you got to ride them. Everyone knows, everyone will tell you in Hollywood, you only get blips of moments like this in your time in Hollywood. You don't release a product when you don't have heat on you. But again, she focused so much on the marketing, which we'll get to in a second, of like who decided to market this film like this, that she didn't focus on, what is this story actually about? There's nothing inherently wrong with wanting commercial success. I can already tell my voice is going to like just be shot by the end of this. There's nothing wrong with wanting commercial success. Everyone wants commercial success. Even Justin Baldoni said he saw the power of the commercial element to this film. But the problem is this film is about serious subject matter, right? Everyone's been saying it's about SA, it's about TV. There's a tonal disconnect that was completely jarring, right? And people have noticed. The studio itself said she has blown up her own career by being so dumb and dim-witted to promote this with her hair care line and all of these other things. Now, Blake is not only to blame. Even if her team was merely aiding and abetting in this, situation, even if they were standby in the wings, they are still to blame for the marketing of this film, because they were too scared to stand up to Blake Lively and say this was improper marketing of this film. And that to me shows the power dynamics of this. When someone is too scared to speak up to their talent, you're never going to become the talent that will rise to the level of a Leonardo DiCaprio or a Meryl Streep if you aren't willing to listen when people say no to you. If you have a star on your roster and you cannot say no to them, that star has too much power and you need to remind them who made them, which was an entire team of people. And that's something, unfortunately, that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds did not see. I think the fact that Blake Lively came onto the scene in Gossip Girl, literally just like walking into an audition with her brother and getting Sister to the Traveling Pants, and then people saw her in that and said, you'd be great in Gossip Girl. Hollywood was too easy for Blake Lively, which is fine. If that is your Hollywood journey, amazing. But when it's that easy, you don't have a sense of humility and you think everything is handed to you because it has been handed to you. You don't know any different. You can't pretend to know any different if that has been your trajectory, okay? So unfortunately, that entitlement typically overrides indie filmmakers in pursuit of maximum profit. She, alongside Ryan Reynolds and Sony, they appeared to be all in of making this a massive blockbuster, regardless of the message being diluted. They essentially gaslit the audience, including myself. I knew something was up because I was hearing, what is this movie about? And then I saw the movie and I was like, wow, this is not how the movie was marketed. Like, I did not think this was about TV. They tricked people like us into thinking this was a summer rom-com to get to the theaters, only to find out what the actual intent was. But here's the thing. The marketing worked, right? Like, it worked. We all came out, despite people like the actress from The Good Place, Jamila Jamil, millions of others calling this tone deaf. They felt super disrespected. They never want to talk about these people ever again. In fact, Jamila didn't hold back. She said she was her own unalived bomber, essentially saying that Blake Lively is the one who blew up the entire marketing campaign, not internet bots. And I was going to talk about this later on, but I think this is important to talk about because I think we're also seeing the difference between someone who has not been online for years, like truly understanding the way culture and the internet is moving. People think, like Simon Cowell in his new series, which I loved, Making the Band December 10th. People like him think, a movie poster or a spot on the Today Show is going to take off someone's career. When in fact, no, it's the buy-in of Book Talk. It is the fact that people are not hiding behind Reddit usernames anymore. They are putting their own faces and their own names and their own voices out there for everyone to analyze. And I think this is really important to understand the way the culture is moving. Because when you do not understand the internet, or maybe you just choose to not understand the internet, then of course you probably will think, these are bots. This can't be that people don't like me. But when you understand, oh, these are actual real people, they're not even being paid. They have just felt very empowered because that's the way the culture is moving to come on TikTok and talk about how much they hated the film because of my promotion. This is just the way the internet is moving, Blake and Ryan. It just is. And once you understand that and really engulf yourself in it, you'll understand how to play into it like a Kim Kardashian. In my latest video, I just broke down Kim Kardashian's masterclass. She understands the power of the internet. She understands that everyone that's behind a screen is a real person, and you use that to your advantage. This was a great opportunity to say, oh, these are real people. Let me just take accountability, even though my marketing did work. So she could have just stayed silent, or she could have taken accountability and said, I'm so sorry, guys. This was done completely wrong. Come out and apologize, like we've seen Anne Hathaway do in the past. And now what? Anne Hathaway's career is blowing up again. She's doing great. And things are on the up and up. So there were two ways to accept this film, not the third way, which was to then blow it up in your face. And I will say, I actually enjoyed the film. I thought it was really good. I felt very moved by it. I was I just felt for the people in the film. And I thought Justin Baldoni was one of the best parts. Now, in terms of intent, we also have to talk about Blake Lively not reading the book because this upset a lot of people. How can you not read a book that you are playing the main character? Blake Lively says in her own deposition, I intentionally did not read the book because once you read something, you can't unread it. I didn't want the book script to overshadow the script of the movie, and then I wouldn't be able to find the blind spots out in the movie. I understand this because if you're doing both, then it would be hard to say, oh, this part was in the book, but not in the movie. Was this part? Oh, but that only goes so far. That only goes when you're approaching a script for the first time, right? When you're in the first phase of a script analysis. But when you're trying to flesh out a character, a lot of times you only have a script. So what do? You'll hear all of the actors out there. They're journaling. They're being in character. They're trying to figure out, where did this person go to college? What does this person eat for breakfast? Like, how does this person act when outside of the script? But Blake Lively didn't need to do that. She had the book to consult. And in fact, especially when you decide to bulldoze your way into producing, you need to consult the book, because you will see, this is what we talked about with some of my producer friends, this is why things went so awry when you don't read the source material. You will do things like improperly put up a tattoo on a character and then have to spend $100,000 CGIing it later on. And mind you, she does not bring this up when she is trying to get her PGA letter, that she, in fact, was at fault for wasting a lot of money. It would have also helped her understand the depth to which survivors go through, right? What's more telling is that when you rewatch all her interviews, you see that she didn't read the book, because she's completely overcompensating in her interviews, constantly referencing and lying to the public. This was such a beautiful book. We had everything we needed with what Colleen made. And our duty was to live up to the reader's vision, because it's because of you guys that we made this. Now, this screens someone that didn't do the homework but wanted the credit. She wanted to be Reese Witherspoon. I reference Reese because Reese had to do the hard thing. She was just being cast as, a blonde bimbo or whatever. And what did she do? She said, I love reading. I need to take control, which is what I tell you guys, which is why I'm so passionate about people building their own Hollywoods. I was also around the Broad City Girls. I was on the show Broad City, and it was a web series that we built that landed me one of the top management companies in Hollywood itself, Mosaic, and got me meetings with the head of ABC and Fox and talking about my own shows and things like that. So the importance of you building out your own thing is so important. However, that was not Blake in this situation. I think Blake saw this opportunity is what Justin saw the opportunity as, which was he discovered IP. This could be his huge mark in Hollywood. Not really as an actor, yes, as an actor, but more so as a producer, more so as a director. She saw this opportunity and said, this is going to be my opportunity. And I believe she was just jealous of Justin that he discovered this IP. She wanted to be the breakout producer, and she wanted this to be her legacy. Not helping the organization or bringing awareness to the cause, but she wanted the fact that she did it to be her legacy, because then it proves that she can do it, aka produce a franchise and then do it again. But this was not her franchise to produce. This was Justin's breakout project, not hers. And again, the marketing, it soared this type of film. Colleen has referenced in her deposition, she's like, I didn't know if this was normal that we're making millions and millions, 50 million at the box office opening weekend. Is that normal? And Ryan Reynolds is like, no, it's not normal. So you just got to ride the wave. None of those depositions leading up to that point indicated that there was really anything going wrong. It was only after the fact that we saw, I was uncomfortable on set. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, because I have very nuanced takes on being uncomfortable, being comfortable on sets, and what that means and what those allegations mean. And I also want to bring in a lawyer's perspective as well. Now, here's where it gets damning. This past week, we've seen multiple industry sources and reports that have emerged from the Unsealed documents and industry insiders, with Sony executives calling Blake on set a terrorist. The backing of the film, the people who stood to make the most money from her star power, were the ones calling her a terrorist. Now, what's really interesting is that Blake was actually acting more like a studio in this whole process. She was doing whatever would help make money. And typically, filmmakers, they don't think like a studio. A filmmaker is more so worried about the story and worried about the character arcs, and someone like a Justin Baldoni. Blake was actually more like a studio. because she's like, how much more can we squeeze out of this? How good can I look on set? How sexy can I look in these shots, in making my body look good? I want to wait till the end of shooting to shoot my body scenes. This is all kind of studio thinking. What sex sells, right? The fact that the studio in this situation is the one that is telling Blake, actually, she's a terrorist. She has taken over this entire thing. And she apparently has a reputation, allegedly, for taking over Hollywood sets, for not listening. She said this in her Forbes interview. She pretends to be an actress on set. She comes in, she steamrolls directors and crew, and then she operates as the director. And people feel blindsided. When someone has told you who they are the first time, believe them. And in this case, Blake has told us who she was. So we're learning that she and Ryan rewrote scenes without her permission. She brought in her own team to rewrite dialogue. She overrode Justin's creative decisions. She created an environment where the actual director felt sidelined. And when Justin's film tested better in the bake-off, Blake refused to cave into Sony and said, well, I love this and the author loves this, so we're going to go with my cut. Again, that is someone to me who has way too much power. Now, in speaking to some of my producer friends, I was analyzing this, and we were saying, well, typically, it's whoever has the most power on set ends up bulldozing to get their way. However, that has never been, and in their eyes, they've never seen that be the lead actress. That's actually typically the studio. A lot of filmmakers watching this play out will feel like they finally feel seen, because you're finally feeling the battles that filmmakers have with studios. But it's usually the studio saying, you know what? Oh, well, this tested better. I don't care about your cut. I care about this cut. I don't care about the director's cut. It's typically not a director who can push things to get things over the finish line, even though they really want to. It's typically the studio that overrides the director. The fact that Blake wasn't the director, wasn't even the producer, and overrode everything, I think is putting a massively bad taste in people's mouths when it comes to Blake Lively on a set. One source stated she created this situation herself by not listening. She came in thinking she knew better than everyone, better than the director who had been developing this for years, better than the DV advocates who had been consulted, better than the author's original vision. And when you don't listen, you bulldoze everyone around you and you create chaos. The terrorist label isn't about her being difficult. It's about her hijacking the entire production. Now, I believe that it is her letter to the PGA that really shows who had the most power on set. In fact, I found it really interesting that she included some of the remarks she did. If she at all felt like in her back pocket she was ever going to claim SH allegations on set, you would never be then telling the studio, telling the PGA that, hey, I was the one in control of HR and making sure everyone felt safe and comfortable on set. And I want to go over that in a minute, because in this case, there are situations where two things can be true. You can feel uncomfortable on a set, and it could also not be an SH allegation. But two things cannot be true where you were telling the PGA that you had full, complete control over the set and that you personally were the responsible one for noting any complaints to HR and for making people feel safe and comfortable, and then saying this set was not safe and comfortable. Those two things are complete opposite, and they cannot be true. When you follow the money, it reveals the entire story. And I want to talk about the financial implications here. This is very important. Justin Baldoni's net worth at the time is $4.6 million. Blake's is about $30 million. Ryan's, according to the internet, I think Ryan's more close to $1 billion, is $350 million. When Ryan asked to buy the rights to the rest of the franchise from Justin Baldoni, this happened before the SH allegations, and Justin refused. Justin did that to stand on his moral grounds, because he knew, sure, I could get a big chunk of the pie from Ryan Reynolds, and that would be a financial success. Just hand it over. I don't want to be involved in this anyway. He said on the red carpet, Blake should just direct it anyway. But him not doing that, to me, for a guy who's worth $4 million being offered franchise money, that would have been life-changing money. This shows his true intent that we've known from the beginning, that this was never about money for Justin. It was about the message. It was about maintaining the integrity of the story and ensuring any sequels would honor DV advocacy work that he built his entire foundation of the project on. Justin was happy making indie projects with Wayfair Studios that actually made a difference. And in fact, this would be the sweet spot for me because I've always said I don't need massive amounts of money. But in Hollywood, if I'm going to make a project, I would want to team up with someone like Wayfair Studios. Like, Justin, if you're seeing this now, I would love to work with you and your company on the next one. I have some predictions of what you're going to be doing moving forward. We'll get to that in a minute. But this is the exact team that people like us who are true artists, who are true filmmakers, we do it for the love of making something. Yes, we want to make a living off of it, but that's not the full extent to why you're making something, or else he would have just said, I don't need to produce these things. Like, he wouldn't have wasted his time on producing these indie films. He would have instead gone down the Ryan Reynolds side because Justin Baldoni could play Superman. Justin Baldoni could be a Marvel star, 100%. He looks more like a Marvel star than the other guys. He purposely chose not to do that. And this is the fundamental divide in Hollywood. The people who are taking the Marvel films, who wouldn't, right? But you can see the divide of someone who is very money hungry and power driven and someone who is more art driven. Those two people in the same room are not going to make the same decisions. And there's going to be a lot of friction and a lot of collide, especially when the person who is very money driven is not in control and is trying to take over control. Neither person is inherently wrong, but when you force one vision into another person's project, that's when you're going to get chaos. So now let's talk about where Justin Baldoni's career is going to go from here. And it's truly all up to, I believe, Justin Baldoni. But I rewatched his appearance on Rainn Wilson's podcast, Soul Pancake. And this was that year that it came out before all the allegations. And he said, what do you want to do from here? And Justin Baldoni said, I wanted people to think I was a good director. I've been able to see that what I thought I wanted in this industry doesn't matter anymore. I just want to focus on my family and my children. And to me, we're seeing that this case has completely destroyed his life. And here's where I need to be sensitive because, again, I think some things can be true at the same time. If they are true, they can be true simultaneously. Some people could have felt uncomfortable on that set. At the same time, Blake Lively completely stole this film and took over Justin Baldoni's legacy uncalled for. She wanted to be the thought leader in the space and get the kudos without having done the work. What made this fall of grace so significant is how high on a pedestal in Blake Lively's eyes that Justin Baldoni was. Blake Lively saw an opportunity to truly expose the biggest fall from grace. And that is the fact that Justin Baldoni, in her eyes, positioned himself as the biggest feminist, as the person who's hosting this weird podcast with his weird faith, podcast about boys being men, and he's writing all these books for young men. So if you were to take someone like that out, it would be a way bigger fall from grace than just like another actress on the set, right? If you really take a step and analyze this, which I have, there's no reason for Justin Baldoni to get on a TV set again or a film set because I think he's completely traumatized. I think he would constantly feel like he already felt like, which was walking on eggshells. And I think Blake has intentionally used his own voice and weaponized it against him. And his legacy as a purpose-driven filmmaker is completely gone. Every book he's ever written, every podcast he's ever recorded, every presentation he's given on masculinity and service is shattered. And I do believe this is devastating, but I don't think with all the PTSD that he has probably been exposed to and has become part of his makeup now, that he can enter a film set again. In this context, I think we could see him on documentary projects in the future. I think we could see him on sets involving like not any type of romantic indications at all. By the way, I'm saying this, and I think Justin Baldoni should be on any set in the future. Like, I think his career should soar. But I don't know if he himself will be comfortable doing that. Do I think that Hollywood sees that he's destroyed? No. I think he's probably been getting a lot of offers behind the scenes. I think there are people who, if they're smart, have been saying, I want Baldoni to direct my next project. There's probably even women who are intentionally seeking Justin Baldoni out to direct their projects. Do I think that he's going to choose to? I think this whole thing has been the biggest gaslit of his life. Now, again, that doesn't mean, and I want to make this very clear, because I like seeing things from all different perspectives, that maybe this was a very chaotic set. In fact, I could imagine. I don't think someone with this type of source material, where you're on set having to act like an abuser, should be the director. I don't think that in itself is appropriate, because I think there's too many lines that could be crossed. And I'm not saying he crossed any lines, but I'm saying the nature of having to direct someone playing an abuser that they have to play opposite of as a love interest in it of itself could be borderline inappropriate. The problem I have here, and it was Jenny Slate's deposition in itself that had me pause, because you hear Jenny Slate is the one that went to her representatives and said, this is so gross. I feel so uncomfortable. I don't want to be on a red carpet with these guys. That had me pause, because I've loved Jenny Slate throughout the years. Jenny Slate also comes from the comedy world. So she's the one that's given me the most pause, because she's the one who's been on crude sets, probably the most. Like, comedy guys in Hollywood are probably the most crude, and they're the most vocal about it. And it's very like, don't go against the comedy guys. She was on SNL. She was on Parks and Rec. She's done a bunch of indie films, which end up being, some of the most sexual films. So how is Jenny Slate feeling so uncomfortable on this set? Everything I've read, though, here's the difference. The difference is between someone saying, one, this is a chaotic set. Not that Justin's never directed anything before, but maybe to the extent of having this B-list, A-list, really very rich woman on set, having to direct very, very heavy scenes, and having to also act in it, having changes done every single day to your script. Like, what Jenny probably felt, I'm honestly processing this as we chat now. Jenny probably felt the aftermath of the chaos that was created by Blake Lively, because it can be really hard source material. But if you have it locked and loaded, like picture lock, let's go, then you're ready to go. Like, you can then calmly operate on a set and be really thorough in your intentions and your next steps. But when your lead actress is changing your script every second, is changing your location, is taking control of the entire production, then it will feel chaotic, because you'll feel like you're in fight or flight mode. The fact that Blake had the long list of things she didn't want people to do on set, maybe that was warranted. Maybe there were a number of people that felt uncomfortable on set, but that list in and of itself is going to put the crew on high alert. Also, we're told by Justin's side that none of that was true. The problem with Jenny Slate's claims of being uncomfortable is that she could have been uncomfortable. It is not for you or I to dictate someone's emotions on a Hollywood set that you are not on. I'm just going to say that right now. Jenny Slate could have felt uncomfortable. However, does that mean that that warrants an entire smear campaign against him and the claims of SH to completely destroy someone's career? The only smear campaign we have seen has been Blake Lively against Justin Baldoni. If Blake loses, I'm going completely off my notes right now, but if Blake loses, we'll have to ask our lawyer friends, do I see Justin Baldoni like refiling defamation? If that's possible, I'm not a lawyer. Yes, I think they owe Justin Baldoni hundreds of millions of dollars, because they have completely destroyed his life, the way he operates in this world, his entire family, how he thinks about himself moving forward, any productions he could have had in the future. Hundreds of millions of dollars are just owed to him for ruining this franchise for him. Let alone, I think they should pay him $1 billion, because you have no idea how far his career could have gone that you have now destroyed. Now, here's where the logic breakdowns, where I think some things can be true and some things can, or multiple things can be true at the same time, but also not everything can be true at the same time. You cannot say from Blake's perspective, Justin made you uncomfortable with comments like this outfit's sexy or that looks hot, while simultaneously using that same verbiage on set. You cannot then write a letter to the PGA saying that you had complete control over a set, including making it safe and comfortable for everyone, right? We have said that out loud. Also, we've done reports on this, and you guys have made it very clear. Remember that she admitted in the director's cut, I think it was Elsie that originally found this, that she openly improvised grabbing Henry Golding's private parts on camera, laughing it off as improvisation. All those things can't be true at the same time. You also can't say he made you uncomfortable by nuzzling your neck during a scene in which you're supposed to be intimate, then you improvising kissing on that same set was totally allowed. Both those things can't be true. And I think this is where we're finding that Hollywood is going to have a really hard time in the future. And this case is going to set a massive precedent because this is insane. The fact that the judge is like, what is the boundary here on film sets? If any time an actor is going to improvise a little on a scene, in a kissing situation, biting the lip, not biting the lip, a little tongue, a little not, like whatever it is, like what's going to be that line? Mind you, there were intimacy coordinators on this set. You guys, this is not a thing that has been on sets. Intimacy coordinators are very new on set and they stage and block everything. And sometimes a lot of people say they just get in the way. A lot of people say they're just annoying. But if you're someone who feels uncomfortable on set, then this situation is really amazing that you have intimacy coordinators. You have them block out every single thing. Now, I will say that in terms of adding sexual things to a script, like right before you're filming, if we're talking about adding a sex scene and there was never a sex scene, then that is something that's negotiated in your contract and that should not be happening on set. If we're talking about, I don't know the extent to which adding in an oral situation or anything like that, or implying that type of scene before a sex scene, that could be debated. That also sounds like an agency type of negotiation. However, if we're talking about a little kiss, a little nibble, a little whispering in someone's ears, this is why you have an intimacy coordinator on set. And if you felt uncomfortable, then you relay that to the intimacy coordinator. Thank God this was filmed in this day and age and not filmed back in the day. Here's what mindset-wise I'm finding, and I'm sorry this is turning into a long video, but mindset-wise, I believe a few different things. And that is because Blake Lively has said, I've read everything, it's all in my head, that in her deposition, she says that when Justin Baldoni started talking about his addiction to adult content when he was younger and different things about how him and his wife, they like to climax at the same time or whatever. And Blake had said, oh my gosh, that would be so crazy to film. She mentions at this point in my career, at my age, she's 37 at this time, and having 4 children. If we were to give a big summary as to what made Blake Lively uncomfortable on this set, I believe it all boils down to that. And this is nothing against her looks or just having a baby or her age, but it has everything to do with her being comfortable in her own body. And I truly believe this is why she was so uncomfortable. She had just given birth and come off that, and weeks later is on a movie set. That's insane. I can't even imagine. And don't quote me on that because I might be wrong on that timeline. Let me know in the comments. I welcome your respectful discord. You have no business being on a movie set. Now, if you feel empowered and you want to go crank it out, great. But if you're uncomfortable in your own body, which honestly you should be, because that shouldn't be your focus. Like if you're breastfeeding in between takes, I cannot see it being comfortable, being sexy with one of the hottest guys in Hollywood. Like that doesn't sound comfortable for anyone. But more so, if you are not comfortable with your own body playing essentially a 23-year-old, even though they aged them up, and you're going to feel uncomfortable throughout the entire filming. And I think that's what this boils down to. I think she thought this would be a great leap out of the gate of her not being on a set for years, coming into a franchise series, forcing herself to get that PGA credit and becoming the next Margot Robbie, when in fact, she was not comfortable in her own skin. And again, I wouldn't be. I've never had a baby yet, but I see my friends and family with babies, and I'm like, how would they ever enter a Hollywood set weeks after giving birth? And again, this might be a few months. I'm not quite sure on that timeline. But it just sounds awful. And it sounds like it wasn't the right timing or the right situation. And she put herself in an uncomfortable situation for her own self. And then when she's changing everything, she's making everything around her chaotic, which is making the crew very chaotic. They're trying to appease her. So anything they say is probably to also make her feel more comfortable in her own body. Oh, you look hot. Okay, the character literally says in the dialogue, character looks hot. Character comes in sexy. This is everything to do with, from what I've read. And, we have every right to change our minds on this case. And again, I have some apprehension. The driver of Blake Lively has said, there was a lot of weird things that Justin Baldoni said in the car ride, saying that women have forced themselves onto him and that he's forced himself onto them in the past. Justin Baldoni says this is not true. He says that he was, SA'd. And he says this in all of his TED Talks as well. But I do still have some apprehension as to what exactly had on the set, because I do think there were probably things that were a little uncomfortable. And I do think having a director direct things like SA, like in a scene, could potentially present a very uncomfortable scenario just in general. But I also believe that Blake Lively was not the type to take on this role. I think who would have been better, which is kind of random, I haven't seen anyone throw this name out, but Dakota Johnson. She, 50 Shades of Grey, like she filmed that without intimacy coordinators, I believe. There were no intimacy coordinators when they were shooting all those movies. She would have been the perfect person to take on a role like this. There's a massive difference between someone feeling uncomfortable on a set and just legally SA'd or SH'd on set. Those are not the same, and conflating them is dangerous both for real survivors and for the integrity of workplace protections. And here's the thing about directing and acting in an intimate scene simultaneously, it's just incredibly difficult. I don't think that Justin Baldoni should have taken on both those roles. However, the author herself felt like he should. And as we're seeing, there were never any complaints filed to SAG or to anyone else, so the discomfort apparently was not severe enough to warrant immediate action at the time. Jenny Slate, it presumes, in a lot of our eyes, felt pressure to support Blake's narrative after the fact, but neither of those scenarios supports the idea that Justin Baldoni created a hostile work environment. Let me be absolutely clear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying Jenny Slate is lying. I'm not saying her feelings don't matter. And I'm not saying women should just toughen up on sets. But what I am saying is that context matters, specifics matters, timing matters, professional standards matter. If we accept vague feelings of discomfort as evidence of SH, then we're setting a very dangerous precedent. We're making it impossible for anyone to work in creative environments where intimacy, vulnerability, and emotional intimacy are required. Actors have to kiss people they're not attracted to. They have to simulate sex with strangers. Not every person is going to get a nudity rider, which again is for scenes that any actress that doesn't feel comfortable, they can have a nudity. Like Blake didn't have to do any scenes like that. Many people have to cry at command and access deep trauma. That's inherently uncomfortable, but that's also the job you sign up for. The question is, did Justin Baldoni cross professional boundaries to the extent that would legally qualify as SH, or was this just an inherent discomfort of doing intimate scenes in a film about DV? And if Jenny Slate and Blake Lively can't articulate specific boundary violations, they're just expressing vague discomfort, then I'm sorry, but that is not enough to destroy someone's career. Especially when that someone is Justin Baldoni, who by all other accounts, not to mention his time on Jane the Virgin, where according to many people who watch the show, they said every other scene is like him with a woman. And he's never had any other reports of this type of behavior. I am getting so tired, but we'll kind of brush through these things, which is it all comes down to everyone being upset with the marketing of this film, right? And what's really interesting is that we heard from Colleen Hoover and Isabel Fair that they say that Justin Baldoni completely smeared Blake and them because he's out there talking about the importance of the cause of the film. And they were told not to talk about that. But we're not hearing who made that call. And we're told that this was the marketing team, which is Ryan Reynolds' team, and Sony. It was not Justin Baldoni. But everyone is saying that it was Justin who made that call. Why would Justin make that call? Justin wants the focus back on the cause of the film. So herein lies who really needs to take responsibility. This really should have been Ryan Reynolds' company or Sony saying, this was our responsibility for the marketing of the film. And the fact that they didn't do that means that they knew there was friction between the two players, which they did, but also they weren't doing anything to mitigate that friction. Because if they were, they would have said, oh, this wasn't Justin's call, this was Sony's call. This was the marketing department's call. But they didn't do that intentionally. So they all could gang up on Justin Baldoni. However, whoever was responsible for the marketing should take the fault, not Justin Baldoni. I truly do not know how people can go live for hours and hours because this whole thing has completely exhausted me. And I want to wrap this up, and we haven't even gotten to Taylor Swift's involvement. But overall, again, I think it's really important for us to always be open to the facts coming out on a case like this and to being open to what the truth and what the facts convey. But I think we've made it very clear that multiple things can be true at the same time. But what can't be true is you saying, I did everything and I had all the power. And then you also saying, I had no power and I was just doing what the boss told me to do. You clearly weren't doing what your boss told you to do because you changed everything and then got the ultimate title, which was the PGA little stamp of approval, right? What I would be really interested to see truly is more so what the crew members had to say on set. I haven't seen any of that play out, and I'm sure we're going to get more of that as this trial, proceeds forward, because no one was ever really alone. Besides the interactions in the trailers, there were crew members everywhere, and I'm sure they could speak on what was going on behind the scenes. I know Andy Signor from Popcorn Planet is producing a documentary where people are speaking out from the crew. I think that will be essential. I wish that documentary was already out. Andy, get on that documentary, because I think that's going to really determine, no matter what, people will tell you that Blake Lively was in control of this set. Now, if evidence comes out to the extent legally that Justin Baldoni or his team did do something wrong, then I think that will change the trajectory of this case. But if it hasn't come out yet, I don't know if it's going to come out. In terms of Taylor Swift standing by Blake Lively, I'm not surprised by that. I'm not surprised by any of the long verbose messages to any of the famous people getting them involved. Blake is the lowest on the totem pole, so she does have to kiss the ring to all these people in order to get them to watch a 2-hour movie and then, hang their hat on this. But overall, I think we are seeing the complete manipulation and corruption of Hollywood. To swing this back around, it is this type of corruption, which is why a lot of, even Nepo babies get things made, and people who have been hustling in Hollywood for 20, 30 years don't. This is why people get auditions and other people don't. This is why you can throw in whatever you want in a scene or secretly leak something online to get your Marvel movie made, because Hollywood is run by money and power. And I don't know how that will ever change. And I think now you're opening up your eyes to see that it's also the media that's run by money in Hollywood. And it's also PR people physically writing out their own. There's a difference between writing a press release and writing out your actual news article that gets printed by People magazine, right? So overall, to me, this case has felt really, really heavy. And I think it's because we are seeing the darkness come out of Hollywood. And it feels, I've said this in my past videos, it feels almost like very demonic as well. It feels like demons are literally being extracted from Hollywood, and I want justice to be served. I think it's time to wrap this up because I think this is what is most important. We need accountability in this case. This is why this case is important. It's going to determine how filmmaking is done on sets. It's going to determine the relationships between independent journalists, content creators, the media, and it's also going to determine power and money and how much that will play into corruption in the future and how much the public will feel like they have to get involved. The internet has essentially created their own investigation team. They have lawyers, they have PR people, they have branding people. We have everyone and their moms working on like these cases and dissecting things that the media either doesn't have time for or doesn't have an incentive to work on. And we're going to continue to see a divide between the public and viewers and the media if the media continues to not put the resources, put the time and the energy to do the digging and expose the corruption versus playing into the corruption like all of the content creators are dedicating their time into doing. There needs to be accountability. If Justin and his team really did something egregious and they need to take accountability because it was so unlawful that it deserves legal justifications, it deserves punishment, then let that be had. But if there is no evidence and this in fact was just someone smearing someone's reputation and taking over Hollywood set and being jealous that this wasn't going to be their thought leader legacy project, then let that person and let that team be held responsible. And that to me means hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion, for the amount of money that he, his family, and his team have lost and will continue to lose in the future. This is one of those cases where we need to see accountability served so we as a society can collectively move on, pick up the pieces, and do better. And again, if you are someone out there who is like interested, I get so many messages all the time. I want to go to Hollywood or I want to be an actor or whatever. I'm like, do not. You are your own Hollywood people. I am so passionate about this. And if you're interested in hearing more of my stories, let me know. Drop me a comment below. But I'm so passionate of you using social media to take control of your career, to build your own empire. So if you're someone who is doing that and interested in doing that with your own channel or with your social media, go ahead, check out my resources, schedule a private session with me, and let's make it happen. Because at the end of the day, you are Hollywood. And we are not going to let corrupt people determine how far we can go in this world or not. If you enjoyed watching this, go ahead, subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, hype it up, and thank you guys so much. I hope you have a really blessed day.